Hello again. This is Lynn from Montajon's Herbals, and today we are going to make for Meatless Monday tomato pie. Now, I have to tell you, I've never made this before. I did some research onto it. This is one of the dishes that was oftentimes made in the Great Depression. The reality is that if you had a victory garden, or if you have a garden today, the tomatoes are one of the easiest things to make or to grow, and then you end up with this tremendous amount of tomatoes and you don't know what to do with them. So this is a recipe that takes a pie shell, it takes tomatoes, it takes a cup of cheese, some green onions, and some garlic, salt, and pepper. Now I am using excuse me, all store-bought stuff. My tomatoes aren't ripe, and to be honest with you, I haven't practiced my pie crust enough, so I am going to, I used a pie crust that was a Pillsbury. So my pie crust is cooked. You cook it for 10 minutes, and it's cooked and ready to go. Now the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to peel tomatoes. Now that can be a real pain in the pin feathers. But if you just take out the core, okay, and then cut an X in the bottom, and then we're going to put it in a pan of boiling water. Now we're going to put it in the pan of boiling water for about 30 seconds. And then once we take it out of the boiling water, we are going to put it into a bowl of cold water. Now the cold water is going to make the skin split, and it's going to be very easy then to take the skin off of the tomatoes. The more ripe the tomato, the easier that is going to be. So if you're using your garden tomatoes, it's going to be a real easy thing to do. If you decide to can your tomatoes, you would go ahead and take the skins off as well. Now, what you can do, here's your frugal tip for today, is you can take the tomato skins and dehydrate them. And once you've dehydrated them, then you can grind them into powder. Now, if you do that, then you have basically what would be the, if it says use in your recipe, a tablespoon of tomato paste, that's what you would use for that. You would use the ground tomato skins will give you the taste of the tomato paste once you rehydrate them. Now, we've got them in there, and we are going to give it another second or two. Now we're going to put it in the cold water. Might give it another second or two in the hot water. Now the cheese that I decided to use today, a lot of the recipes that I saw had you using cheddar and mozzarella. Now I'm going to tell you that cheddar is not my favorite, and so I am using cream cheese, and I think that's going to be really good. So what the next steps are, we get the tomatoes skinned, and then we slice them and put them in a colander, and then we salt them and put them in the sink, and that lets them drain a little bit so they're not quite as runny. So that is, that's our next step. Now I'm going to get a little bowl here to put my tomato skins in, so I can dehydrate them a little bit later tonight. So, I don't know if you can see or not, but the skin, here we go, I guess if I put it in front of the counter, the skin is broken, and all I have to do is peel it off with my fingers, and it's nice and easy. Okay, so a little bit about tomatoes. Tomatoes are a fruit. They are not a vegetable. They are actually a berry, and it is, but it is considered a culinary vegetable because it has much less sugar in it than culinary fruits. They originated in South and Central America. They were used by the Aztecs in a lot of their cooking. They ate them both raw and cooked. Then the Spaniards came and took them to Europe. So, that's a little bit about the history. The largest tomato ever grown was grown in 1986. It was 7 pounds 12 ounces and was grown by a gentleman named Gordon Graham of Edmond, Oklahoma. And I just have to tell you, I can't even imagine what a tomato that was. I mean, that's like pumpkin size. So that is that was pretty weird. A tomato is 98% water or 95% water. It contains 4% carbohydrates and less than 1% fat and protein. So the protein in this dinner comes from the cheese, not from the tomatoes. There is a moderate amount of vitamin C in tomatoes, and so they're still good for you. Just they're not protein. The cheeses, the cheese that I chose, the cream cheese, also is very low in protein. So I've actually, even though I'm making this a Meatless Monday, I am going to have meat with it so that there's a little bit more protein. It is the cream cheese has about 1 to 2 grams of protein. There are 7 grams of protein in cheddar, in Gouda, and in mozzarella and Colby. So, and mozzarella has the highest amount of calcium in the cheese. So you're still doing pretty good with this for protein in terms of a meatless meal if you have different cheese than I chose. The National Academy of Medicine recommends that adults get 7 grams of protein daily for every 20 pounds of body weight. I don't think I do that. So I think it'll be kind of a fun thing for me to start looking at that and seeing how close I get to it, and maybe I need to do a little bit better. So anyway, so that's what I've got for you on tomatoes. It is, growing up, my mom would give us tomato sandwiches. Tomatoes and sweet onions, like Walla Walla Sweets or Vidalias or stuff like that. And she did that till the day she died. And I have to tell you that she lived in California, And when I would go down there to California during the summertime when the tomatoes were ripe, we would eat that every single day. It is her favorite. It is still to this day mine, and that's one of the reasons why I am so excited to try this tomato pie, because I think it's going to be just as good, and but a little bit different. Okay, one more tomato. And these I don't think were quite as ripe as I had hoped, because the skin is really thick and is also not easily coming off of this. So there will be some skin in my tomato pie, but I don't think that's going to make a big difference, because in my tomato sandwiches, I always had the skin. I never took the skin off. All right, so now what we're going to do is move the tomato skins, and we're going to pull out the colander. And we're going to slice the tomatoes. Now what I think I'm going to do is get a serrated knife, because I think that that's going to be a lot easier. Oh yeah, much easier. You don't want to cut them too thick. You want relatively thin slices, but you don't need to have them so thin that you can read through them. Just, you know, maybe a quarter to a half an inch thick. Okay, so we are now another 2 slices at half the tomatoes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put salt on it now, and then we'll put more tomatoes on top. Now what this does is it helps take out some of the extra juice. We've got 1 tomato after this one to slice. So actually, it's a pretty fast meal until you have to bake it. So when we're done putting assembling the pie, then it has to bake for 30 minutes. And I did not make a second pie this time, because to be honest with you, I don't think I can eat 2 pies. And so I will, when it comes out of the oven, I will take a picture and post it so everybody can see what it looks like. So you'll see what it looks like now going in, and then you'll see what it looks like coming out. Okay, I'm going to put this in the sink so that as it drains into the sink. And I'm also going to wash all the tomato guts off of my hand. Okay, so because I decided to use cream cheese, I'm going to use a mixer to mix it up. Now this is the part that is a little bit, I'm not too sure of. All right, so we've got a cup of cream cheese and a cup of Italian blend. Now the other thing that we need is a cup of mayonnaise. Which kind of surprised me. But on the other hand, I will tell you that I also use mayonnaise for my grilled cheese sandwiches, so it's, you know, it's not that weird, but this just seems like a lot of mayonnaise. thing that I save, okay, that's not even close. Another thing that I save is the oil out of my deep hot fat fryer. And the reason I save that is because you can strain it, and then you can use it as lamp oil. And lamp oil is pretty spendy if you look at it in the market. And so I do save it and strain it, and then I put a little bit of essential oil in it, like a lemon or something of that nature, because then it doesn't smell like fried food. So I saved these. Back in the olden days, mayonnaise jars used to be glass, and they were tempered glass, and so you could actually save them and can in them with a water bath. You didn't want to can in a pressure cooker, but you could can in a water bath. And it just broke my heart when they finally went to the plastic. But what I have determined is that with the plastic, because the oil, when you take it out of your fryer, it's not hot. So it's a good jar to put your oil in. Now, if you use lard or you use something like Crisco, it's going to be a little bit harder because it will, when it cools down, it gets hard. So we are going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. And some garlic, because I honestly think garlic pretty much improves everything. And then we're going to mix it. Now, if you're using too hard cheeses like Colby or cheddar or anything of that nature, you're not going to need the mixer. It's because I used the cream cheese that we need the mixer. Okay, so now we're going to get the pie pan out. Now, I am thinking that I made way too much, and so I may end up having to go ahead and make a second pie, but then I'm going to freeze it. So we'll see how that goes. So we're going to layer the tomatoes. So I used 5 tomatoes. And I'm thinking that was a little bit too much. The original recipe said 4 or 5, and I think that was way too much. So we will be making a second pie a little bit later tonight. Then you take the green onions, and you put the green onions on top. There's a 1/2 cup of green onions. And a little bit of basil. Now, if you have Italian seasoning, that would work too, because that's going to have basil in it, as well as some parsley and some other things. And then we get the cheese. and put the cheese on top. So I'll make, this looks like it's going to be the right amount of cheese. It's just I got excited about the tomatoes. I also think that if I used the hard cheese, it wouldn't have been as soft, which, you know, makes like a whole lot of sense. But it would be a little bit more, have more of a stronger texture to it. Okay. So, this is what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the oven and let it bake. It's at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. And then I'll take a picture of it before I cut it and let you know what it looks like. I'm also going to put the recipe on tomorrow. And so if you want to try it yourself, it's you'll have everything you need. So thanks for joining me for dinner. And one of these days, if we ever get to a point where we can meet again, I think it would be a whole lot of fun to go to the park and have a really nice potluck dinner and get to know each other in person. So put it on your calendar as soon as we can do that. You take care. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.